UFC Fight Night, Rozenstruik versus Gaziev, full card predictions. Starting at the bottom of the card, making my way to the top as always. First fight of the night is Gloik Radzhabov versus Abdul Karim Al Sawadi. And in this one, I'm going to be going with Abdul Karim Al Sawadi to beat Gloik Radzhabov. Competitive fight. I don't have too much faith in Al Sawadi as far as he's minus 185. I mean, I think the fight could play out close. It could play out very close. Willie Radzhabov is a solid fighter. He's fought in the PFL and now in the UFC. He's 33 to Abdul Karim Al Sawadi's 28. So a few things in Al Sawadi's favor. I think cardio is in his favor for sure. I think he can mix it up better than Radzhabov. I do think Radzhabov can mix it up well, as to his credit. But I think if the fight goes on, I think Abdul Karim Al Sawadi, he showed in the George Hardwick fight that he can go 3 hard rounds, and even in the fight against Michael Murphy, that was a 5-round fight. He went 5 hard rounds there, won that fight clearly, using a lot of wrestling, a lot of grappling, and he didn't tire out. So I think Abdul Karim Al Sawadi is going to be the guy that's just the minute winner here. Lulik Radzhabov is live early because Abdul Karim Al Sawadi, his 3 losses have all been by first round knockout if you go and look through his record. So obviously early, Lulik Radzhabov could find an early knockout, an early win. But if he doesn't find that, I do think Abdul Karim Al Sawadi will win the minutes and overall eventually end up winning the fight. So Abdul Karim Al Sawadi will be the pick for me. With Radzhabov as well, you look at his last fight, Rebecki, no real shame there. Rebecki's a really good fighter. Chewed him up with the leg kicks, actually took him down a few times, dominated pretty much everywhere in that fight. It was one-sided in favor of Rebecki. Didn't expect it to be so one-sided, but it was. Esteban Ribovics, he took him down, I think like 10 or 11 times. He took him down a lot. The thing with Ribovics, though, is that he did use the Kimura sweep multiple times to get to his feet, which I have seen used against Gloik Radzhabov before. So if he does get taken down, I do think Al Sawadi probably has seen that on tape. If I've seen it on tape, then I'm sure Al Sawadi has also seen it on tape. So I don't think either guy has really really good control. Al Sawadi, I don't think his control is top control is the best. I also don't think Radzhabov's top control is the best. But in this one, I'm just picking cardio. I'm picking the guy that I know, in my opinion, has the better cardio because from what I've seen, over the guy that has a little bit of power early and can push a heavy wrestling pace. But I've seen him visibly gassed out, visibly tired, and slowed down a lot in rounds 3 of his fights versus Al Sawadi, where I see him keep going. So I'll go with Al Sawadi to get it done to start the night. Ludovic Klein, AJ Cunningham is the second fight of the night. There's not much I really need to say here. Ludovic Klein's he's a minus 900. I'm not going to go too into this. I'll say that AJ Cunningham has not really beaten anybody good. All of his wins are against opponents with pretty bad records. I watched the Jason Mullen fight just to get a glimpse of all right, let's see how good this guy is against a lower level opponent. You know what I mean? A guy that's not even close to UFC level. Jason Mullen, he did drop Jason early in the fight, but he also got rocked in that fight multiple times. He didn't look good. Mullen was cracking him on the feet in round 2. Took him down as well. I don't like AJ Cunningham too much as far as this fight goes. On the Contender Series, he should have gotten finished in the first round. At the end of the round, he didn't know where he was. He was stumbling to his corner, and AJ Cunningham went out for round 2 and actually got knocked out in that round. So he got finished twice in that fight. Basically, the first round, the ref should have called off the fight in round 1, but he made it out of the round. The bell saved him. Saved by the bell. Went into round 2, lost the fight in round 2. Ludovic Klein, very good striker. He's also pretty young himself, 29. They're both 29. Ludovic Klein's actually the younger fighter, interestingly enough. Ludovic Klein's the younger fighter, has way more experience, UFC experience. He's a better striker. I think if he wants to get takedowns, he can probably get takedowns here. AJ Cunningham does leave himself wide open on the feet, though. The path to victory for Ludovic Klein is pretty simple. One, he could either just crack him on the feet over and over until Cunningham, can't stand anymore or gets knocked out. Or I think even the wrestling path to victory is there for Klein. I know Klein was training for Joel Alvarez, who's a very good grappler, much, much, much better than AJ Cunningham. So I think either way, Ludwig Klein gets it done. The price tag is minus 900 for a reason. He's going to win this fight. AJ Cunningham is not UFC caliber. No disrespect to him, he just isn't. He got finished on the Contender Series. He's just, if it wasn't short notice, he wouldn't be there. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Claudio Ribeiro is the third fight of the night. In this one, I'm gonna go with CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan. Another one that I'm not like, it's not a one that I'm like supremely confident in, just because Leroy Duncan does do some stupid stuff in fights. His fighting style is very weird to me. It's very odd. He throws a lot of spinning stuff. He's very unpredictable. He's very unorthodox with a lot of the stuff he does. He'll throw flying knees. Like he'll mix things up, and sometimes when it lands, it looks great. You know what I mean? When he lands some of that crazy stuff, it looks amazing. It's a highlight reel. He can get knockouts, but when it doesn't land, in the case of the Armin Petrosian fight, you lose a decision, you lose against a more technical fighter that isn't going to fall for any traps, that's going to stay, composed, stay calm. That's not Claudio. Claudio's not going to do that. He's a guy that swings wild, lefts and rights, and tries to knock you out with everything. I don't see that happening here unless Leroy Duncan spins right into a left hook, because Claudio did actually knock out Ivan Valenzuela, who actually tried to hit him with a spinning back fist, and he countered with a left hook, knocked him out. So could we see a repeat of that? I guess it's not. It's not impossible. The line is really wide, but at the end of the day, Leroy Duncan's the better fighter. He's also fought better guys and beaten better guys. If you look through the two records, let's first look at Claudio Ribeiro's record. Before he got into the UFC, he wasn't really fighting any good opponents really at all. He was fighting kind of scrubs, honestly, until he got to the UFC. He won it on the Contender Series in 25 seconds. It shows that he has a lot of power, but then he fights Abdul Razak Al Hassan, loses that fight, beats Joseph Holmes, who's probably the worst guy on the roster, and then lost to Roman Kopylov. Did arguably won the first round because he didn't land some shots at the end of the first round, but got head kick KO'd by Roman Kopylov in round two. And then on the other hand, Leroy Duncan, his only pro loss is to Petrosian, as I mentioned, who's a very technical striker, and he's won every other fight and fought the better competition of the two as far as pre-UFC. Pre-UFC, he fought in Cage Warriors, so he wasn't fighting scrubs. He was fighting good guys all the way through his entire career. I think this is a good fight for CLD to show his striking. Just can't do anything too stupid. Has to be, patient because Claudio does have power. But outside of that knockout, especially early, I think CLD gets this one done. And I think he has more grappling upside as well. If either of these guys will wrestle, I think CLD probably has better grappling. Fourth fight of the night, next prelim is Javid Basharat versus Ayman Zahabi. As you guys know, I've talked very highly about the Basharat brothers before. I've been very confident in them as far as picking their fights. I've picked them pretty much every fight they've been in just because I feel like these guys, until they fight the elite of the division, I feel like they're not going to, not that they're not going to struggle, but I feel like they're not going to lose until they fight, some of the elite, some of the best at 135. Such is the case here. Basharat's a minus 900. He's going to win this fight probably by decision. All of his fights in the UFC have been by decision. Obviously, he got the submission on the Contender Series. Since that, he's won 3 fights in a row, all by decision. The Victor Henry fight was very close before he kicked him right in the groin, right in the sack, and Basharat acted like it was Victor Henry's fault for not being able to continue, even though he was the one that kicked him right in the balls. So that was weird. But as far as this fight goes, Ayman Zahabi, if you look through his record, he's 10-2. So Basharat, much younger, 28 years old to the 36-year-old Ayman Zahabi. Also, he's much more active. Ayman Zahabi has not been very active at all. I mean, I know he fought 8 months ago. Before that, a year and 7 months ago, 3 years ago. And then if you look back, he's had 5 fights in the last 7 years, or over 6 years. So he's not fighting multiple times a year. He's fighting usually once a year, if that. I think Basharat is the much hungrier fighter. He's obviously, as I showed you guys, the younger fighter, more in his prime than Zahabi. And also, I don't like that Zahabi lost to someone like Vince Morales as well. His wins haven't aged. Draco Rodriguez, Ricky Tercios, and Arichi Lang are his. That's his 3-fight win streak. You could say, what about Basharat? Basharat hasn't been fighting the greatest guys, Mendonca, Tony Gravely, and Trevin Jones, but I think Tony Gravely and Trevin Jones are better than someone like Arichi Lang, Ricky Tercios, and Draco Rodriguez. You know what I mean? Um, I guess that's up for debate. MMA math doesn't really work necessarily, but Ayman Zahabi is also a guy that doesn't have a ton of output, doesn't have a ton of volume in fights. Um, the Ricky Tercios fight, he beat Tercios because Tercios didn't land anything, but Tercios had way higher output. I think Basharat will actually, he will land in this fight. He'll land his strikes. He'll stay at range. He'll land the jab, maybe mix in leg kicks. I don't know if he'll mix in the wrestling here, but I do think Basharat wins this fight. I do think he's a better minute winner. I think it'll be a decision. I don't think Gaiman Zahabi gets knocked out by Basharat here. I just think that Basharat does what he does. I think the Basharat brothers also have one of the probably some of the highest fight IQs in MMA, or at least in the division, because looking at Farid and Javid, they do what they're supposed to do. They don't make too many mistakes, and that's what I like to see out of these, especially younger fighters, guys that are 28 years old. I think Farid, Javid's brother, is like 26 or 27, so they're both really young, and they're already really composed. They stick to the game plan. They don't make too many mistakes, and that's what I like to see. So I'm picking Javid Basharat to stay undefeated and beat Ayman Zahabi by decision. Now this one, Vinicius Oliveira versus Bernardo Sopai. Um, it's spelled with a J on Tapology, but I think it's pronounced Sopai. But for Bernardo and Vinicius, I am going to go with Bernardo here, and he's a slight underdog. The reason I'm going with him is I don't like Vinicius Oliveira's game at all. Personally, I really don't. His game consists of just swinging for the fences, and that's really what I see from him. He swings for the fences, and that's his game plan. He just tries to knock you out with every punch, and I know he's dangerous. I know Oliveira's dangerous. He's knocked out some guys with decent records and everything, so people are going to say, oh, he's going to knock out Bernardo. The thing with Bernardo is I think Bernardo has power in his own right, and this is a very short notice fight for Bernardo as well. So it's a short notice fight. So that is the kind of the question: is Bernardo going to be? Is he going to be able to go 3 rounds if this gets past round one? Like, is he going to be able to go 3 rounds? Short notice fight. Now he was training for a fight next weekend, so Bernardo was already in camp. He was training. I think he'll be in good shape here. I think he'll be ready for 3 rounds. I think a guy like Bernardo, who's 11-2 at only 23 years old, I think he knows, like, he was going to get in the UFC anyway, in my opinion. So I think he was ready for a call up, and this is a call up. He got a short notice opportunity against a dangerous opponent, but Oliveira is very very open to be hit. You know, as he is powerful, because almost all of his wins, he has 19 wins, 19-3, very good record, 15 wins by knockout. You look at that and you're like, oh man, this guy's knocking everybody out. He's going to knock out Bernardo. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you look at the two fight, Oliveira is so open to be countered. He throws sometimes he's like almost falling over or getting off balance because of how hard he's throwing. I think Bernardo is more technical. I think he hits very hard as well. Bernardo has he has 7 knockouts of his 11 wins. So like the guy has power. I've seen him knock guys out. I was watching some of his previous fights. What was it? The Julian Pierre Lopez fight I saw knocked him out cold. Like Bernardo's got power too. I know Oliveira's got maybe more power, but if Bernardo hits Oliveira with a clean shot, he can put his lights out. Bernardo's never been knocked out. Oliveira's been knocked out in all 3 of his losses. And the Ali Taleb fight I saw, Ali Taleb, he was a guy that was just composed. He was very composed. He was very kept his hands up. Had good defense. And I think if you have good defense against Vinicius Oliveira, and you are you don't get into a dogfight, you don't get into a scrap, into a brawl. If you stay safe, keep your hands up, you maintain good defense. I think you can find this guy. You can find his chin, and you can knock him out. Vinicius Oliveira, I don't think he's that good. I really don't. And I know people are going to call me crazy because he's 19-3, but the guy leaves himself so open. Anybody that's has good defense, and maintains a good game plan, I think can beat this guy. Because I don't like how he swings for the fences. Now he does have a ton of power. If he lands on you, he probably will knock out Bernardo if he lands clean. But if Bernardo lands clean on him, he'll also knock him out most likely. So, and I've seen this guy Vinicius knocked out. He's been knocked out 3 times. I trust Bernardo's chin more. So I'm going to go with Bernardo to win. It's a slight underdog. I don't like Vinicius Oliveira. He can prove me wrong here, but I don't know. I'm taking the technical striker over the guy that will just throw as hard as he can every time. This is the headliner of the prelims now. We are at Eric Anders, your boy, versus Jamie Pickett. I'm telling you guys, this card's all chalk. It's all chalk. All the odds are juiced completely. What do you expect me to say here? Eric Anders is minus 520 on the money line. He's going to win this fight. Jamie Pickett sucks. Pickett's just not a good fighter. I don't know what else there is really to say. Pickett's not very good. He's 1-4 in his last 5. That one win being against Joseph Holmes, who I mentioned earlier was probably the worst guy on the roster. Eric Anders has had his fair share of losses as well. He's 7-8 in the UFC, but at least with Anders, the problem with Jamie Pickett is a lot of times he gets just overwhelmed and he just gets beat by guys that just bring the fight to him. You know what I mean? He gets beat by guys that bring the fight to him. For one, he lost to Kyle Dawkins. He got submitted by him. Then he got beat by Dennis Tululin. Dennis Tululin isn't really UFC caliber. He really isn't. Tululin's not UFC caliber. And the fact that he finished Jamie Pickett, he just walked through and just started putting the volume on him and beating him up and finished him. I think Anders could do something very similar to that. I think Anders can implement a similar strategy to Dennis Tululin. Just walk him down, start pressuring him and make him uncomfortable. Jamie Pickett doesn't like to be uncomfortable. When people start, really putting it on him, like Dennis Tululin did, he breaks. So I think he can break again. Eric Anders is a tough guy to get out of there. I know he got dropped by Marc-Andre Barrios. I don't think Pickett's going to finish him, even if like Pickett did catch him on the feet and drop him. I don't think Pickett's going to finish him. I think Eric Anders has a much higher ability to find the finish here if either of these guys do. And I think he could probably knock out Jamie Pickett or at least TKO him. I trust Eric Anders a lot more. He's also the stronger guy. If one of these guys has grappling success, it's going to be Anders. I don't expect Pickett to have any grappling success. Pickett also lost to Josh Fremd. Like, you look through his record, it's just not good. 1-4 in his last 5, and the losses that he's had are to guys. Kyle Dawkins is not in the UFC anymore. He is a good grappler, but not in the UFC. Dennis Tululin, not UFC level. Bo Nickel is really good, and he got groin shotted there before he got taken down and submitted, so I'll give him a pass for that. But the Josh Fremd fight as well, losing to Josh Fremd, so he's lost to 3 guys who 2 of them aren't even in the. I don't think Tululin's in the UFC anymore, or maybe he is. I don't know. Dawkins isn't, and Josh Fremd arguably isn't UFC caliber either. So I'm going with Eric Anders. Also fought the much better guys and He gave a competitive fight to Jun Young Park. Beat Dawkins, just walk him down, beat him up. Yeah, not much else to say there. Massive favorite for a reason. Opening up the main card, we have Matt Danger Snell versus Steve Erceg. I'm going with Steve Erceg. Matt Snell's chin is too much of a question at this point, and he's 34 years old, so he's getting older. This is a flyweight fight. His chin's been cracked on multiple occasions. Steve Erceg isn't really known for like his one punch knockout power or anything like that. Most flyweights are not known for that kind of like devastating power at all. But the one thing I can say with Erceg is, I mean, he did rock Dvorak a few times in their fight. Matt Snell, I don't think you need to have the biggest power to knock out or really hurt Matt Snell. He's been finished 4 times in his career by knockout, and if you look through his fights, the Nicolau fight, right, and also a thing with Matt Snell, he's pulled out of a lot of fights and been he hasn't fought in over a year as well. So that's another thing you can add on to the Matt Snell side. But looking at his last few fights, he has fought the better competition. Mateus Nicolau, though, dropped him in the first round and hurt him and then finished him in the second round. Sumaderji dropped him, hurt him bad, nearly finished him, and then Matt Snell had a come from behind win. The Brandon Royval fight for Snell. Snell actually looked good early there. He dropped Royval, almost finished Royval. That would have been a great feather in the cap. If Matt Snell would have finished Brandon Royval, would have been a great win on his record, would have been super impressive, but he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He ended up getting submitted with a guillotine um, after they started grappling. Rogerio Bontorin lost to him. It became a no contest because Bontorin tested positive for some substance. I forget what it actually is. Should say it here. Bontorin tested positive. Hydrochloreth. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but he tested positive. Tyson Nam fight went to a split, got knocked out by Pantoja badly in round one. Hector Sandoval put him out with ground and pound. I went back to watch that Sandoval fight just to see how he lost that, and he got put out with like very like a few. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't like massive ground and pound. It was like very. It seemed like soft ground and pound put him out. So I don't think his chin's very good. I think Urseg's got the much better chin, even if he doesn't move his head, even if he is there to get hit himself, which could put him in danger, no pun intended. I do think Matt Snell can crack early on the feet and really throughout the fight. Like he does have power, he can hurt people, but against Steve Urseg, I don't trust him at all. Steve Urseg 11-1. I think Steve Urseg's grappling is also good enough, even if the fight hits the mat, because Matt Snell the thing with Matt Snell is his grappling. He actually has won quite a few fights, and his triangle setups are he sets up the triangle very quickly. He has 9 wins by sub. Most of them are by triangle choke, obviously. And sometimes what I've seen from him is he'll look for the guillotine, and if he can't get the guillotine, then he'll just throw up a triangle. He'll just transition right to the triangle and get that, as shown in the Sumaderji fight most recently. But being out of the cage for over a year now, being a little 34 at flyweight, getting older, plus your chin not being good to begin with, makes me not trust Matt Snell. So I got to go Steve Urseg here. I don't think he'll get submitted by Snell. I think Urseg's grappling is very good, and I think on the feet he is more dangerous at this point than Matt Snell is, just because Snell's been rocked and knocked out on multiple occasions where Urseg hasn't. So that's the pick for me there. Moving along on the main card, we have Umar Nurmagomedov versus Bekzat Almakhan. Another massive favorite that I'm going to pick. Umar Nurmagomedov, I have to pick. I mean, it's Umar Nurmagomedov. I really shouldn't even get too in detail about this fight. I know some people are getting super in detail about like, oh, Bekzat's really good. He has a chance. Like, is he really that good? He hasn't proven anything. I mean, sure, you could say, oh, he's beaten good guys. I mean, he's beaten good regional guys, but this is Umar Nurmagomedov. I watched Bekzat fight actually, and his striking is not bad. He got some takedowns in the fight I saw against Morrow here. He got some takedowns in that fight. Not only did he get the takedowns, he looked decent on the feet, but I did see quite a few instances where Bekzat left himself open to be countered. And a guy like Umar, that's very dangerous. If you leave any openings against Umar, he will take them. Case in point, Ione Barcelos. Ione Barcelos, that fight for Umar, that was a vicious knockout, and that was where Ione Barcelos did not see the left hook coming. He did not see the left hook of Umar, and when Umar landed it, it knocked him out cold. Umar also has the grappling edge, in my opinion, here. Bekzat was submitted before. He was only submitted once. That's his only loss. But when you're fighting Umar, not good, not good. You know what I mean? You don't. If Umar sees any holes in your game, he'll exploit them. He was supposed to fight Corey Sanhagen, or there were rumors of him fighting Corey Sanhagen. Now he's fighting a UFC newcomer. I think Bekzat Almakhan could he have success in the UFC? Probably against a certain level of competition, but not against a guy like Umar. I think Umar finishes this fight. I'll call submission win for Umar Nurmagomedov, round 1 or 2, beating Bekzat Almakhan. I am interested to see how Bekzat does after this fight, because if he fights guys that are, I guess you could say, obviously, if he fights guys that aren't as good as Umar, maybe he will have success. But against Umar, I don't see him having much success at all. So picking Umar there. Featured fight, another one. Like every single fight on this card is massive favorites. Muhammad Makayev, Alex Perez. I'm picking Muhammad Makayev. Makayev should have the grappling edge here. I know Alex Perez. Um, he hasn't fought in a while. That's the major thing I want to look at with Alex Perez, is that he hasn't fought in what, a year and a half, and that fight was like a minute and a half long with Pantoja. Pantoja got to his back and finished him with a standing rear naked choke. Standing rear naked choke in the first round in like a minute and a half. Alex Perez got submitted. The fight before that against Davison and Figueiredo actually jumped on a guillotine, um, and ended up finishing Alex Perez. I forget how long was that. That was in the first round as well. So the total cage time for Alex Perez in the last 2-3 years, if this will load, apparently it won't. I guess not. Here we go. The total amount of cage time in the last since 2020. Since 2020, Alex Perez has only been in the cage for about what 3.5, 4 minutes. He's been in the cage for under 4 minutes. Under 4 minutes in the cage in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years and 3 months. So the guy's super inactive. Muhammad Makayev has been on a roll lately. He's been much more active than Alex Perez has. And I think Muhammad Makayev is going to submit Perez. I just think you can't take this much time out of the cage. We've seen it time and time again. It doesn't matter how good you are. Sure, Alex Perez, he could be good on the feet. He could have good takedown defense. It doesn't matter when you've been out of the cage for this long. When you've had 3.5 minutes of cage time in 4 years, and you're fighting Muhammad Makayev, a guy who's been grinding out wins, over and over, 10-0. He's on a roll. If he wins this fight by finish, he might get a title shot. Like I think this is Makayev's time. I know he's super young. He's only 23, but Alex Perez, he's been out for too long. He's coming off of 2 losses. Where's the motivation? There's no motivation to come back. If he loses this, he's probably going to get cut anyway. I think he's taking this fight for a paycheck. I really do. I think a lot of guys probably don't want to fight Makayev, a lot of the top guys. I think Alex Perez, the UFC was like, you know what, we'll give you this amount of money to fight him. And Perez was like, all right, I'm on 2-fight losing streak. What do I have to lose? So I'm going with Muhammad Makayev first round submission over Alex Perez, and I do think Makayev will get the next title shot if he does submit Perez in the first round. So that's another incentive for Makayev to go out there and dominate Alex Perez. Co-main event of the evening is Vitor Petrino versus Tyson Pedro. Another heavy favorite. Is it getting old at this point? All these minus 400, minus 300s. Vitor Petrino should win this fight. I'm picking Vitor Petrino. Tyson Pedro, I've seen a little, well, not a lot of love for him. I have seen some guys that have picked Pedro, that I guess don't trust in the game of Petrino, don't trust his grappling, for instance. But the thing that I see with Pedro is that some people aren't mentioning is he has 5 minutes of cardio, five minutes to get this one done. All of his wins, every single win in his entire career is in round one. Anton Turkal's round one win, Harry Hunsucker, Villanueva. So all of his wins, every single fight in his career that he's won has been inside of the first round. And he has 4 losses. All 4 of those losses, I believe one of those losses is in the first round. He lost to Modestas Bukauskas, not a great look there. Lost to Shogun in round 3, got submitted by OSP in round 1, and then got beat by decision against Ilir Latifi. So I think Petrino will probably be better as the fight goes on. Not probably. He almost definitely will be the better fighter, the more fresh fighter as the fight goes on. We've seen Petrino go late before. He carries power into the later rounds. He went to round 2 with Modestas and knocked him out with a beautiful left hook, dropped him badly, didn't even have to follow up. Modestas was out on, he was hurt badly, and the ref had to save him there. Marcin Prachnio, Vitor showed that even, as I mentioned, even as the fight goes on, even in the later rounds, Petrino can still get the takedowns, or he can still do what he has to do to win. For Pedro, I think early he is live. I think people have to kind of recognize his finishing ability early, because he is very dangerous early, especially in the striking. Although I've heard that Pedro has a black belt. I mean, he's been submitted a few times. I'm not going to question it, but I don't think he's submitting Petrino here unless he submits him early. I don't think Petrino is going to get submitted late by Pedro. I think Petrino definitely has the ability to hurt Pedro on the feet or put him out. So I am going to pick Vitor Petrino. I could see round 1 being a bit of a feeling out process. Maybe Pedro lands some shots. Maybe he even wobbles or hurts Petrino, but Petrino survives, gets to round 2, maybe even round 3, and finds a finish over Tyson Pedro. Because Petrino, also younger guy, 26 to the 32-year-old Pedro, I think Petrino at only 26 is constantly improving, and we've seen the improvements from fight to fight. The Anton Turkalj fight, he got out grappled a little bit there. Not really like super out grappled, but he had some bad moments where Turkalj took his back, got on top. Like he had some bad moments in the grappling, and then in his next fight against Prachnio, he showed that, you know what, if people don't think I have good grappling, I'll take down Prachnio, control him, and sub him, basically break him on the ground. So I think Vitor Petrino is, also physically, both guys are very physically strong, but Vitor Petrino looks like he's made in a lab. He looks like he's just a freak of nature, a ton of power, a ton of strength. A lot of his game is determined by his strength. Like a lot of his takedowns, he'll pick guys up, slam them down. But those optics are definitely good for the judges, especially if Vitor Petrino can pick up Pedro, slam him down late in the fight. So Vitor Petrino is going to be the pick for me. And lastly, the main event of the evening is Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Shamil Gaziev. And here, um, I'm actually going to go with I. This one could look. This is one where it could either look really good or really bad. But I'm going to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and the reason is only because Gaziev is unproven, and he's super unproven. Gaziev, his only win in the UFC is against Martin Buday. Now, look, say what you will, Martin Buday. I don't think Martin Buday is very good, personally. I think Martin Buday, I never thought he was good. I think he got. I believe Martin Buday was the one that got the robbery decision over like Lucas Bresky or something, who's also not good. So I think very, very lowly or very low of Martin Buday. His fight on the Contender Series, 6-0 Greg Velasco. I just think the competition level has been way in favor of Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and he's lost a lot of those fights, to be fair, but he's only losing to the best guys. Jairzinho has lost to, if you look, Gelton Almeida. Gelton Almeida is a very, very dominant grappler, one of the best in the division. Alexander Volkov, another top guy. Curtis Blades, Cyril Gane, and Francis Ngannou. Those are his 5 losses in the UFC. Those 5 guys, Francis, Cyril Gane, Curtis Blades, Volkov, and Almeida, those guys are all top 10 to top 5 guys. Like those are the best guys in the world. Pretty like, if not top 5, definitely top 10 guys. Those are elite, really elite heavyweights. I don't know if Gaziev's an elite heavyweight. I don't. Could he be? Maybe. But could Jairzinho knock him out cold? I think that's definitely a possibility as well. And Shamil Gaziev being a minus 170, I mean, do people expect Gaziev to just take down Rozenstruik and submit him early? I think that's if Gaziev wins this fight, he probably has to finish Rozenstruik early because if Gaziev takes down Rozenstruik, maybe takes him down round 1, round 2, and can't finish him, Rozenstruik, we've seen Gaziev get tired. I've seen him get tired. I've seen him, start to breathe heavy. His shots are much more labored. He's able to get caught with a huge bomb from Rozenstruik. I think this is a dangerous fight for Gaziev, and I think he has to show me more before I trust in him against a guy in Rozenstruik who's fought the best of the best, pretty much. And Rozenstruik, all it takes is one punch with him. He's a guy where he has the death touch. So you're always worried. It doesn't matter what round it is. It doesn't matter if there's a minute left in the fight or the first minute of the fight. It doesn't matter what time frame you're in during the fight. If Rozenstruik's on his feet at any point in this fight, you have to be worried if you're on the Gaziev side. I think Gaziev does have good. He can pressure like the Martin Buday fight. He just laid on the volume in rounds 1 and 2, and ended up finishing Buday in round 2. But Rozenstruik, I don't think it's going to be that easy to just put the volume on Rozenstruik and finish him because of the power coming back at him. So Gaziev, early on in this fight, if he takes down Rozenstruik and submits him early, I'll say, you know what, fair enough to him. I mean, I'll give him credit. If he takes down and submits Rozenstruik right away. But man, this guy Gaziev, he's hittable. He's definitely hittable on the feet. He gets tired. He's never been 5 rounds before. Rozenstruik has been in main events. He's been in the spotlight. This is Gaziev's first main event. So could he make more mistakes here than he usually would? Will the nerves get to him? second fight in the UFC. He's already in the main event. We've seen Abus Magomedov. Remember when he got a main event after one UFC win against Sean Strickland, and everyone was saying, "Oh, Abus Magomedov's going to win. Abus is going to win," and I was like, "Strickland's the guy that's been fighting in the UFC for years." I'm not saying this is the same type of fight, but I'm just saying one guy's been fighting against the best in the world, one guy hasn't. And it's, you can't act like Jorginho is about to be 36, but Shamil is 34. So it's not like Shamil's like a super young guy that's, on his way up. He's 34 himself. So both guys are similar age. One has fought much better competition. One has the death touch power. I've seen one, will Rozenstruik get tired? Probably. I could see Rozenstruik gassing out as well, but I'll take a gassed out Rozenstruik over a gassed out Gaziev. So if Shamil doesn't find I say if Shamil doesn't find an early submission, he's in big, big trouble against Rozenstruik because Rozenstruik hits like a truck. So I'm going with Rozenstruik as an underdog. I just think that there's just at any point in this fight, if he lands one, all it takes is one. With Gaziev, we've seen, Gaziev, against Martin Budai, he had to land like he had to land a ton of strikes, a ton of volume to finish Budai. Rozenstruik, if he lands one punch on the chin, he could change the fight, change the outcome, and that's all it takes. So I'm taking Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win in the main event. And there we have it. UFC Fight Night, Rozenstruik versus Gaziev. Next week is a lot better. UFC 299, a lot better fights that are more reasonable as far as some of the odds go. A lot of these are just super, super heavy favorites for good reason. But thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.